I'm Naomi Thurman, 32 years old, and only 15 days back I welcomed my firstborn son into the world, the little one I'd longed for with the guy I once thought was my forever partner. The pregnancy had its rough patches, yet every pang, every worry, every night without sleep paid off the instant I caught his first wail. The stitches are still fresh, and sitting's a challenge, but none of that bothers me. Ushering this tiny boy into existence tops everything I've accomplished. Gazing at him, slumber peacefully fills me with resolve to weather any ache or fatigue, all to see him thrive and stay well. What I couldn't foresee was the deeper hurt waiting in the wings, the type no meds or downtime could mend. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment choice or mishap. We'd invested years in envisioning this kid, debating names, nursery setups, paint shades for the walls, and our shared approach to parenting. We'd endured fertility hurdles, endured long waits, shed tears over failures, and celebrated wildly when the test showed positive. Marcus attended every scan, planted kisses on my bump each evening, and vowed we'd outshine all other parents. With each thump from our baby's heart, our bond seemed to deepen. Yet now I see that even plans rooted in affection don't always stand on solid ground. In the pregnancy's closing weeks, my swelling turned worrisome. The medical team identified preeclampsia, a diagnosis that rattled me more than I'd admit. I'd packed on 55 pounds. Sleep evaded me due to the nagging lower back discomfort, and labor pains kicked in prematurely. Delivery dragged on, grew messy, and brimmed with terror as staff hurried about, machines blared alerts, and my pulse raced toward breaking. He was present, sure, but his expression carried worry over warmth, like the ordeal overwhelmed him. Even so, once our boy arrived and let out that cry, I figured we'd turn the corner. Cradling my newborn felt like brushing against paradise, a snapshot I'd cherish eternally. Despite the bone-deep weariness tearing me apart, it all clicked. The heartbreaks, the restless evenings, the injections, the anxieties. Nothing else counted beside that fragile form nestled against me, rising and falling in sync with my breath. But the joy faded quicker than it deserved, as though fate granted a mere glimpse before yanking it back. A flicker in Marcus's gaze that very day chilled me to the core, though I brushed it aside. Through that final pregnancy stretch, when I craved his embrace most, reassurance that I remained myself beyond the bloated form, he began withdrawing. He'd return home late, barricade in the loo with his device, dodge touches, and blame weariness. I bent over backward to excuse it, assuming paternal jitters hit men hard too. Deep down, though, my spirit was fracturing quietly, and I resisted facing it. The gap between us felt tangible, undeniable. I pressed him repeatedly on what troubled him, why his eyes no longer met mine with the old spark, why he dashed off or dozed so readily. His replies stayed rote, toneless. Just the job. Overloaded here. It'll blow over. I latched onto those words like a lifeline, hoping sheer repetition would forge reality. Day by day, though, his detachment weighed more, loomed larger, cut sharper. It had zilch to do with work, and suspicion was dawning. I shied from voicing it, chanted to myself it was mere pressure, that family life would smooth things out soon. Yet an inner voice refused to quiet. Fleeting looks, fresh quiet spells, a chill that was new, treating me like an imposition. To avoid seeming unhinged, I buried the suspicions like shards in my pocket, dreading the slice. Still, I couldn't dismiss the gnawing anymore. My gut roared warnings, and I muffled it with feigned warmth. Existence turned to plastered grins, masking a heart riddled with queries. On an ordinary evening, once the infant had settled after endless fussing, I opted for a swift rinse to ease the spinal twinge and the sting from sore, split nipples. I shuffled to the bath, more drained than alluring, more parent than partner. Vapors hazed my mind, granting brief solitude and peace. Emerging, swathed in terry cloth, The atmosphere felt off, like an unseen intruder had slipped in silently. The door hung ajar, and there loomed his silhouette, device clutched. I went rigid. He aimed the phone right at me. He scrambled to conceal it fast, but the damage was done. I'd spotted it. Instinct took over. I clutched the wrap firmer, a flush hitting my cheeks not from shyness, but suspicion. I couldn't grasp his intent or the urge to snap a picture of me unawares. In that fragile instant, he revealed a depth of knowledge that stung deeply. He muttered a response while clinging to the device, and his uneasy grin wounded me worse than any harsh word. That single moment shifted our world irrevocably, even if I couldn't quite comprehend it right then. I held my tongue at first. I brushed by him, the space separating us thick and suffocating. Heading to the bedroom, I shut myself inside briefly, my pulse racing until my ears throbbed. Why would he want a snapshot like that? What drove him? Who was this person I'd married? Staring into the mirror, I saw a stranger staring back. My form had transformed, my features drained of energy, and a seed of mistrust took root within me like venom. When I eventually confronted him about his actions, he dismissed it casually, acting as though I was exaggerating. I just wanted a photo to hold on to how you look now, since we're not intimate anymore. He uttered it shamelessly, framing it as a tender act, a twisted show of caring. Torn between tears and shouts, I simply demanded he erase the image. He complied without protest, exuding the poise of someone with fresh deceptions lined up. Yet deep down, trust in him began to fray. I avoided raising my voice. I skipped the drama. Instead, I insisted steadily that he remove those pictures right there in my presence, stressing how his behavior struck me as neither amusing nor acceptable. He feigned hurt, adopting a wounded expression, implying my reaction stemmed from hormones. He assured me he'd handle it. No issue at all. Grabbing the phone, he tapped swiftly a few times, then displayed the cleared album as evidence. But it unfolded too smoothly, too flawlessly, like a script he'd rehearsed to placate me without truly complying. That nagging doubt lodged in my ribs like a thorn. As we settled into bed that evening, he drifted off quickly next to me. Sleep eluded me entirely. With each flutter of my eyelids, his image resurfaced. Phone in hand, fingers unsteady, falsehood masked as routine. Instinct told me he withheld the full story, that layers hid behind that capture. I sensed violation, a fresh kind of disloyalty hard to articulate. My personal boundaries seemed stolen away. I pushed for rest, willed my thoughts elsewhere, but the episode looped endlessly in my head like an unrelenting film. The flick of his fingers, the tension in his gaze, the shutter sound, his ridiculous justification, all tangled with the infant's wails and my lingering physical soreness. Madness crept in. I craved clarity but dreaded igniting conflict under our roof. The hardest blow was the isolation, no one to confide in without shame washing over me. He was my partner, yet the intrusion felt like an outsider's assault. The following morning, as he stepped into the shower, an unexpected resolve surged through me. I approached his phone directly, palms icy and heart thumping wildly like a bass beat. I recalled his unlock code from countless glimpses, though my digits shook entering it. It marked a boundary shattered beyond repair. Still, I pressed on, driven by a desperate hunger for honesty, no matter the pain. I checked the gallery initially, hunting for the images, but nothing appeared. Not in the recycle bin or concealed spots. Shifting to his texts, I wasn't certain what revelations awaited, but the search itself confirmed my fears. Some threads lay barren, others wiped clean, yet one chat stood out, a buddy circle with a silly title and emoji overload. Opening it drained the oxygen from my lungs. Circulation halted inside me. There they sat, raw and blatant, the shots he'd snapped of me emerging from the bath, bare and altered by motherhood, reduced to mockery fodder. He'd broadcast them to the group like I was punchline material, a faded prize, banter for the boys. A blaze climbed my spine, fury so intense it left me reeling. What was sacred, personal, mine alone, disseminated without permission, deemed disposable. In that flash, I realized a fracture too deep to mend. Directly under the picture lurked his caption, "Check out how much weight she packed on post-baby." As if birthing our child merited derision. As if my frame, battered from labor, now sparked only disdain. The sting deepened from its source. The one who professed endless love, vowed steadfast backing. Those typed words shattered unseen vulnerabilities. No mere grief anymore, pure mortification. Yet I kept scrolling against better judgment, compelled like a witness to impending wreckage, unable to avert eyes. Each remark from his pals hit like debris, battering my self-worth. And amid the barbs, one response shifted the ground, unveiling betrayal beyond sentiment or screens. He hadn't merely mocked me, he deceived me on a far more brutal plane. A reply from one of his buddies hit me like a gut punch, sending chills down my spine. "Lucky you, with that fresh light-skinned treat to savor, Carly." That name exploded in my head like shrapnel. She wasn't part of my circle or kin, just a colleague he'd scarcely brought up. Now she had a real identity linked to his cheating. No more vague hunches. This was concrete. I pored over that text repeatedly, hunting for some alternate meaning, a way to dodge the blow. Anything to soften the finality, the wreckage, but nothing surfaced. All that lingered was the urge to face the undeniable. He'd stabbed me in the back, shamed me, and mocked me with another woman out of sight. I crumpled into quiet. No outbursts, no sobs at first, like my spirit had splintered across the ground. It wasn't mere grief. It was disintegration. I held back the cries and yells. Instead, I followed my gut's survival cue. With numb fingers but firm grip, I captured screenshots of it all, method by method, archiving each photo, phrase, and shred of disloyalty, as if cataloging evidence from a felony. This wasn't about payback. It was for my own clarity, to ensure I'd never question what I'd witnessed. So nobody could label me hysterical. I needed to grasp the reality, sharp as it cut. I returned the phone precisely as found, same power level, same screens active, like my hands had never grazed it. Perched on the bed's rim, I drew a steadying inhale, battling the queasiness, the shakes, the void. I refused to tip him off. I had to monitor in secrecy, detached, even as I fractured within. That became the fresh strategy. Feign normalcy while peeling back the layers of deception. That evening, I rested beside him like all was fine, acting drained, cradling our child with a gentleness that tore at my core. Sleep evaded me entirely. I tracked his calm breaths, unaware of the tempest tearing through me. I felt like an intruder in my bed, my home, my existence. Still, I mustered a smile for him come dawn, as if ignorance was bliss. Over the next few days, I turned into a vigilant sentinel, scrutinizing every detail with razor focus. His timetables, his mannerisms, his phone chats, his shifting tempers. Questions from me ceased. I didn't require his words anymore. I was assembling the puzzle solo, fragment by fragment. Whenever he uttered, "late night home" or just a conference, I filed it away in my thoughts. I'd morphed into a spectator of my wedding vows, anticipating the subsequent scene in his charade. And with my growing reticence, the picture sharpened. Carly. Her name echoed through my world now, as though she'd lurked unseen until this glow revealed her. I recalled a casual drop of her name before. "A sharp colleague!" He'd dismissed it, yet now it bore gravity, a visage, a motive. I dove into online profiles, hunted her down, scanned her feed, and the pieces locked in with a sting that squeezed my heart. I began rewinding through fresh lenses, replaying the prior month's routine in my mind. each alleged conference, each brief business jaunt. In every instance, a clue now screamed evasion. The silenced device, the overly polished attire, the missing whiff of workspace. Carly lurked in the subtext, veiled by rehearsed alibis. It dawned on me. The treachery had festered right under my eaves for weeks, undetected. I avoided drama. I steered clear of raising alarms. I simply shadowed his habits from the fringes, like a ghost haunting his domain. During his showers, I'd peek at alerts, log durations, and etch reference names in memory. I'd act oblivious to his hushed calls, but absorbed it all. It formed a muted probe, built from minute traces, that, amassed, forged an irrefutable reality. One afternoon, a message sealed it beyond question. "Tomorrow at our spot hotel," from him. "Yes, darling," from Carly. I absorbed it breathless, unblinking, the room seeming to halt. The falsehood transcended guesswork or doubt. It stood as fact, etched in his script. Fury surged, sure, but so did a sour ease. At last, I clutched the complete picture, and armed with it, only choices remained. I didn't lash out impulsively. I preserved that exchange like a toxic artifact and navigated the day unchanged on the surface. Internally, though, fury seethed. The shame scorched, my stomach twisted. That night, while he diced produce in the kitchen, immersed in his flawless facade, I recognized the silence couldn't endure. I neared him deliberately, met his gaze after weeks of evasion, and uttered, "How long have you been involved with Carly?" In a split second, his response betrayed him. He stared. He confronted me with mock astonishment, setting the knife aside on the cutting board, and remarked, "What on earth do you mean? Have you lost your mind, Naomi? You're just inventing stories." That patronizing tone was the kind weaklings adopt to dismiss the truth. I didn't waver. I met his stare with the unyielding force of my certainty, and for the first time, real dread flickered in his gaze. There was nowhere for him to run. I observed the defeat settle over his features, his posture slumping, a heavy exhale escaping as though he could at last drop the facade. "Yeah, I'm seeing Carly," he confessed abruptly. No excuses, no details spun, just a raw admission, burdened more by the strain of concealment than the deed itself. I remained motionless. No weeping, only a chilling detachment that gripped my very soul. In that instant, it hit me. I was no longer his partner, merely the echo of what he'd once craved. And as if the revelation weren't sufficient, he tacked on words that cut deep with their icy detachment. "I needed this. You don't draw me in the way you once did. Besides, intimacy was off limits after the birth." His voice carried no remorse, just self-centered reasoning masquerading as reason. He excused his disloyalty by pointing to my exhausted form, worn from delivering our boy, as though the ordeal of childbirth had somehow insulted his urges. I felt exploited, discarded, and faulted for an experience that merited only compassion. It was a subtle form of harm, delivered in gentle phrasing. I struggled to draw another breath afterward. The room appeared to shrink, the ground vanishing under me. Yet I stayed upright, determined not to collapse in his presence. I shed no tears for him. They were for me alone. For all I'd weathered, convinced that devotion sufficed. Gazing at my reflection in the glass, I barely knew the figure staring back. Fractured, unseen, cast aside. It dawned on me that nothing remained worth salvaging. I didn't yell, I didn't hurl objects, I didn't cause a fuss. Instead, I regarded him with the steady resolve of one who has surpassed agony's threshold and declared, "I'm filing for divorce." His expression shifted instantly, as if he'd never anticipated such resolve from me, as if he'd hoped I'd stay fragile indefinitely. But my spirit had already perished within, leaving only the task of piecing it back together. I pivoted, lifted the infant from his bassinet where he slumbered, and realized this marked the start of a fresh chapter. From then on, he ceased acting as a parent. He inquired nothing about the child, sought no visits, extended no aid, as if the boy were somehow complicit in the mess. He wiped himself out of the picture. He faded from his child's world like he'd never yearned for him, like he and I hadn't once envisioned that little one together. In his choices, I witnessed a heartlessness that stung worse than any affair. He hadn't merely wronged me, he'd forsaken his own flesh and blood. Post-divorce, he never glanced backward. No phone calls, no messages, not even a gesture to check on his boy's needs. He sent the bare minimum alimony mandated by law, devoid of feeling, like clearing a trivial obligation. I was stranded with an infant and a mangled soul, pondering how one could sever ties from their own creation. But self-pity wasn't an option. My child relied on me entirely. With sobs blurring my vision, I gathered our things into containers, not merely outfits and playthings, but the fragments of a household that had evaporated. I returned to my mom's place in the outskirts. Head down, I felt defeated, as though I'd share the fault for overlooking the signs. Each stride from that dwelling distanced me from shame, yet also from the existence I'd imagined as mine. It was mourning, absent a burial. Still, forward motion was essential. My mom embraced me without hesitation, posing no queries, issuing no criticisms, just a comforting quiet that supported me when my legs gave way. Under her roof, rest came easier, assured I wasn't utterly isolated. She assisted with the little one, served steaming beverages, and absorbed my sobs sans critique. That sanctuary proved my lifeline through the bleakest stretches. For when a woman shatters, she requires another to affirm her capacity to mend. Those initial months blended utter fatigue, endless wakefulness, perpetual anxiety, and a gloom that lingered beyond dawn. With every diaper swap, each meal, every bout of illness, I navigated it as a solitary skirmish. At times, I operated like a machine, others like a fierce protector, yet never frail. I mastered it all, nurturing, comforting, organizing, enduring. It ranked as my toughest year, yet the most valiant. By the time my son reached 10 months, I secured employment at a modest bookkeeping office offering adaptable shifts and decent compensation. My fingers shook that debut morning, like I was stepping into the shoes of an unfamiliar self, a reimagined me. Resuming professional life felt akin to emerging from isolation. My vision strained from the light, but I inhaled deeply too. I'd forfeited plenty, but retained an indomitable core, my self-respect, and it drove me onward. As I toiled, my mom tended to my son with unwavering dedication. It was a debt no amount of cash could settle. She washed him, nourished him, and cradled him until he drifted off, humming the lullabies she'd once sung to me when I was little. Occasionally, I'd return from my job to discover them both dozing on the couch, and those moments reignited my trust and compassion. Had she not been there, I couldn't have pulled myself together. She served as my safety net, my quiet ally, the grandma who transformed void into belonging. Eventually, after hauling the stroller up those steps and sensing I was at my limit, I resolved to rebuild my vitality. Not for others' approval, but to reclaim a sense of vitality within my own skin. I signed up at the nearby Planet Fitness with zero hopes, laced with anxiety and even humiliation. Those initial weeks proved grueling. Every muscle ached, and I felt absurd amid all those reflections. Yet each bead of perspiration became a release from old burdens. Gradually, I spotted subtle shifts. Sleep came more soundly. Energy surged, and grinning felt effortless. My form didn't revert to its previous state, but that ceased to matter. What counted was feeling robust, unburdened, steady on my feet without quivers. I shed pounds, sure, but the biggest loss was dread. Bit by bit, that transformation reflected in my expression. One dawn, emerging from the bath, I faced the glass and held my stare unlike before. I lingered, examining my marks, my lines from growth, my altered shape, and a grin crossed my face. I wasn't the figure he'd mocked in that snapshot. I had become a resilient woman, forged anew, who had traversed torment carrying an infant and still stood tall. For the first time, self-assurance bloomed, as though the cosmos refused to let me glow without his shadow. That's when he resurfaced. He rang one evening with that honeyed tone that once ensnared me, inquiring about my well-being, claiming constant thoughts of our shared past. From shared contacts, I learned he remained with Carly. Yet that failed to deter his bid to re-enter. He dwelled on errors, fond memories, and fresh starts. But I was no longer the fragile soul he could sway. The real shock lay not in his attempt to return, but in his casual approach, as if the turmoil had evaporated, as if I owed him thanks for circling back. He referenced our bond with an intimacy long gone, brushing aside the suffering he'd inflicted. He even hinted that Carly fell short of his ideals, implying it should concern me. For an instant I observed myself detachedly and cringed in vicarious shame, not on his account, but for the version of me who'd once trusted his vows. I refrained from yelling. No tears fell, no pleas escaped. Instead, I replied with an icy composure I never knew I held. You've lost any hold on me. It's finished. It felt like securing a latch from within, sealed forever. The quiet on his line revealed he'd anticipated no such resolve from me, yet it was genuine, not arrogance, restored self-respect. I ended the call steadily. I paused briefly, gazing at my boy stacking his toys on the rug, unaware of the world. Then it dawned. I required no revenge, no fairness, not even remorse. What mattered, I'd secured. Serenity. Within that calm space existed for my flaws, my wounds, my struggles. But above all, my bravery had reclaimed its place as solely mine. He never reached out again. He skipped birthday wishes for his child. He showed no curiosity about his progress. He offered zero commitment to his upbringing. He faded away like a fugitive, like an author ditching a tale they could no longer steer. Though it stung for my boy's sake, it also brought ease, for I'd take total withdrawal over pretense any day. We merited no fragments from him. I nurtured my son solo, and in doing so, I nurtured myself too. I guided him through actions, steadfast routines, unwavering embraces, declarations of affection that anger never revoked. I avoided disparaging his dad, yet I spoke truth. I demonstrated that bonds form from genuine care, not facades. Each time his face lit up toward me, I sensed I was on the right path. Time may not mend all, but it reshapes your breath. By my son's 5th birthday, I'd evolved into a steadier, more resolute woman, deeply attuned to my value. Challenges persisted, of course, but they no longer shattered me. I'd mastered existence free from terror, independent of others for wholeness. Romance wasn't my focus, though I'd welcome it if it came respectfully. It was during a PTA gathering at Oakwood Elementary, amid chats on outings and fundraisers, that Andre Hayes first caught my eye. His boy shared my son's classroom, and his gaze toward me felt unobtrusive. It merely lingered supportively. We shared basic exchanges, the instructor's identity, pickup hours, a casual greeting without pressure. Yet something in his tone, his composed demeanor made me feel acknowledged. After such a stretch, that proved a treasure. No sparks flew, no enchanted oaths. Just coffee after school brought back those raw talks, and a quiet calm that wrapped around me whenever he was close. Andre never pushed me to change or tried to rescue me. He simply wanted to understand who I was, and me, who'd spent years erecting barriers, began cracking open doors instead. Before I knew it, his presence turned into something I craved daily. One Friday, He suggested we grab dinner, and I said yes, my pulse racing like I was a teenager all over again. My fingers shook while applying lipstick, as though the reflection staring back wasn't accustomed to such optimism. In the cozy spot we chose, his kindness felt like a warm embrace. There were no demands, no ulterior motives. He paid close attention to my words, never cutting in or passing judgment. For the first time in ages, my laughter rang out true and free. Yet the real magic unfolded in how he connected with my boy, not forcing closeness or chasing approval, just letting it happen. They goofed around like old pals, their bond forming effortlessly. One afternoon, my son wrapped his arms around him unprompted, and I choked back tears in the next room, realizing I wasn't alone in this mending. He needed it just as much as I did. Letting my guard down again proved tough. Scars that throbbed at the slightest brush, flashbacks that ambushed me, anxieties masked as prudence. They all lingered. But Andre never rushed the process. He stayed by my side, steady and tolerant, allowing me to lead the way. He taught me that genuine affection doesn't demand, it supports from the sidelines. Gradually, I quit shielding myself from affection and embraced it fully. Our connection didn't spark overnight or flawlessly, but it was authentic. We figured out how to open up without overstepping, honor personal boundaries, and communicate honestly, even through the tough moments. Andre arrived not to patch holes, but to construct alongside my solid foundation. Through him, I realized family forms through consistent nurturing, not shared DNA. Finally, I had a real ally. Gazing into the mirror these days, I don't just spot a survivor of deceit, I see a devoted parent who kept fighting, a resilient soul who dared to hope once more. Shame and bitterness no longer weigh me down. That chapter doesn't shape me anymore. What I've built from it does. I'm tougher, more liberated, and keenly aware of my worth. I grasped that real affection avoids harm, mockery, disloyalty, or suppression. The kind I merit regards me with honor, hears me out, gives me time, and cherishes my essence. Most importantly, I understood independence completes me, though partnering with someone enriching is a true gift. No more quests for rescuers. I rescued myself, and that's mine forever. Watching my boy, I notice a spark in his gaze that was missing earlier, a serenity from the haven we've created. Through my choices, I've shown him boundaries are essential. Self-love comes first, and settling for less isn't an option. He's maturing with the knowledge that his mom showed courage, picking self-respect over dread, and that swells my heart with joy above all. I can't pinpoint when I shifted from feeling like a casualty to owning my story, but the change came. Perhaps it was the evening I rested without tears, or the instance I turned down a request guilt-free. Either way, I emerged anew. From the grimy remnants of deceit and dread rose a fresh version of me, imperfect, yet authentic, robust, and committed to demanding nothing short of what I merit. Eventually, I stumbled upon that harsh picture tucked away in an old phone file. I viewed it detachedly, as if peering at an unfamiliar face. Rather than sting, it stirred compassion. That shattered figure in the frame persisted. She held on, and unknowingly, she pulled me through. Thanks to her endurance, I've become this person now. I erased the image matter-of-factly, not in anger, but because its hold had vanished. No need for evidence or echoes. Those experiences stayed firmly in history. Removing it sealed the final lingering gap. Nowadays, our modest home echoes with chuckles, scattered playthings, and heartfelt embraces. Andre and I aren't flawless, but we're united. My son thrives amid authentic warmth, the sort that stays open and doesn't shatter over flimsy reasons. And I've at last found inner peace. If I could whisper to that Naomi cradling her infant in quiet sobs, I'd say, persevere, not for his sake, but yours. You merit glimpsing beyond the darkness. You deserve renewal, revival, affection, and renewed faith. And crucially, never question your inner power. Folks occasionally wonder if resentment lingers or if vengeance crossed my mind, if I plotted to make him suffer. Honestly, no. The ache he inflicted remains etched, but I don't haul it behind me. I discovered release means choosing to evict what no longer warrants room in my I'm constructing it piece by piece. He belonged to my past, yet he hasn't penned even a word in ages. Andre gazes at me with a subtle respect that skips the superficial compliments or over-the-top vows. He's aware of the trials I endured, the battles I won, and he's never once attempted to measure up against them. Instead, he simply looks after me. And I, who used to mix up affection with reliance, now spot true love in those tiny acts, like draping a cover over me wordlessly, scrubbing the plates as I tuck our boy in, or honoring my quiet moments. Our little one is maturing in a world of freedom, warmth, and stability. He's yet to inquire about his birth father, and I've chosen not to push the topic. That moment will arrive eventually, and I'll be prepared to share the honest details, free of bitterness. I'll explain how I found my strength, even amid my vulnerabilities, and that every choice we made stemmed from hope for tomorrow, not yesterday's shadows. On certain evenings, with the home hushed, I let the tears flow, not out of sorrow, but pure thankfulness for refusing to surrender, for opting for the tougher yet more honorable route, for each iteration of myself that stumbled, dragged on, and rose again with a tear-streaked visage and a spirit brimming with dread. That resilient soul lingers within me still, and I pay tribute to her every day. That's how I wrap up this tale I never planned to share, but one that demanded its voice, because countless women like Naomi are out there, piecing themselves back together, convinced they've hit their limit. To you, I declare, you absolutely can. The road ahead won't always be smooth, but the best things never are. And when you draw breath without that ache, you'll realize that's victory in itself. Enjoyed my tale? And from which town are you tuning in? Drop by in the comments to connect. If the narrative resonated, show your backing with a super thanks. It helps me deliver more tales just like this. A huge thanks for your kind encouragement. Can't wait to hear your thoughts below. Check the display for 2 fresh personal accounts I truly suggest. My channel holds even more gems. Hit that subscribe button, won't you? Catch you next time for another heartfelt journey, full of warmth and regard.